Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to use a collision primitive to play a sound. For example, when you pick up a power-up. So the first thing we're going to do, we're going to in the content browser under blueprints, we're going to create a new blueprint class, and we're going to make this blueprint a child of the trigger sphere. Okay, we have it here, which you see is of type actor. Okay, so let's give it a name. VP notification, or let's call it VP trigger sphere. Oop, VP trigger sphere. Okay, so we open it, and now we go directly into the event graph. We don't need the event begin play, and we don't need the event tick. Since we're not going to use the event tick, a good thing to do right away is to turn off the ticking here. Okay, so we don't get that function call all the time. Here we're going to play a sound at location. We're going to promote this sound to a variable, and we call this notification sound. As soon as we compile, then we have let's make this sound editable, so we will be able to change it from the level editor, and then here I'll give it a default value, a default sound, which is the power-up sound. Now the location at which we want to play this is the location of the actor. So let's get actor location and connect this to the location pin. So we save it, and then we dock that there, and we drag one of these guys onto the level. Make sure that we scale it since it's kind of too small, 4 times the size, and let's play hear that power-up sound. One thing though, let's stop it. Another trick here, since here if you see actor hidden in game, and check this if you want to be able to see the collision sphere drawn while we play in the editor. Okay, so now we see it, so we see that we hear the sound. Okay, now let's pick this up a little bit. Something to note real quick here is that since we made the sound a variable, if we drag and drop another one of these guys into the level, and let's make it bigger right away as well, we could customize the sound that we play. Let's play an explosion sound. So if we play now, we have the previous powered up sound, and then we also have this explosion sound. Now in general, we're going to represent power up with a static mesh, right? So let's do that here as well. Let's look into the folder with our meshes, and let's drag a cube onto the level. We have it here. We want to have this collision sphere cover the cube, which is going to be our power up, right? So what we're going to do, you see now that if I move the cube, right, the collision sphere doesn't go with it, right? So we want to make the collision sphere a child of the cube. Now the first thing is start renaming things so we don't get confused. So let's say cube power up collision. Okay, so we call it like that, and then we have to find here the cube, and let's rename this as cube power up. Very important to always rename things so you don't get confused later when you have a lot of assets on the level. Also, you see here that now they move together, but they are not centered as we wanted them to be, right? So we select here the sphere. We go into the details panel and make sure that the location, which is relative, so everything should be relative here, right, including the scale. And we make sure that this is 0, 0, so they both have the same origin. So now when I move the cube, both of them move together. And also if I scale the cube, I make it a little larger, we see that the collision sphere also scaled because it's a child, right? So we want to do the same thing with this other guy. If we grabbed another element in it, for example, let's say that we bring in a cylinder, right? So we would do the very same thing. We call the first thing, you always want to rename things. So cylinder power up. Okay, and then we grab this collision sphere that is going to be for the cylinder, so we're going to call this cylinder power up collision. All right. Okay, so we do that, and again, you want to make sure that they both share the same origin. So you go here, and we set this to 0, 0, always relative to the parent. So when we move the parent, or we scale it, or we rotate it, the collision primitive will change as well. In this case, rotation doesn't matter because we're dealing with a sphere. But if the collision primitive was a cube, it would matter. Okay. So one more thing real quick is that here, what we are doing is whenever there is anything overlapping the collision sphere, we're going to play the sound. But we might only want to play this sound when we overlap the sphere with the pawn or with the character, right? So if we want to do that, we pull out another cast node here, and we say cast to pawn, and we are only going to call the play sound at location if this casting is successful. If it's not successful, you see how we do not pull anything out of the cast failed pin, so nothing will happen. Yeah, so this should work as it just did, overlapping with the pawn. Okay, so everything working. Now, there is another way where we could attach this collision sphere to an actor. Instead of doing it in the wall outliner, we could make something more permanent, right? So let's go back into the blueprints folder, and we're going to create another actor here. This time we're going to select the default actor. Let's call this BP notification actor. Notification actor, yes. This is right now, if we open it, it only has a default scene root represented by this sphere, but we're going to add the static mesh. And since the static mesh is a inherits from a static mesh component, which inherits from a scene component, it has a location, orientation, and scale, so it can actually take the place of the root component. We're going to set this to a default. Let's make it a cube. Okay, compile it, and now we are going to add another component, which is going to be a sphere collision. Now we don't see it because it's too small, so let's scale this by 4. Uniformly null access. Now let's make it 5. No, 4 is good. Okay, let's leave it at 4. Okay, and then we go into the event graph as before. We're not going to do anything on event begin play or in event tick. So remember again, uncheck the start with tick enable, since we don't call that function, we don't call the tick function. And here we're going to do as we did before. We're going to say play play sound at location. Oops. And we are going to as well again here make this a variable, notification sound. Compile it, so we have the default value here, power up. Good, and the location as before is going to be the location of the actor. Okay, compile it again, and then we go here, and if we drop it into our scene, this notification actor will see that it already comes with the collision box. Now we have all in one, you know, we put them all together. And notice here that let's rename this is cube actor, or cube and collision, cube and collision. Okay, we'll call it that. And then if you select this guy, you see that you could customize the mesh that we're showing here, right? Which we could, for example, change this to be a pipe. Then the name is not very appropriate here. It's always very important to keep the names relevant. So let's call this static mesh and collision. Okay, so we've changed it. And also here, when you select it, here we have the, what is it? The sound. Did I make it? No, I didn't make it editable, but if you make it editable, again, as with the other approach, we can go here and change the sound. I think we should here. Yeah, here it is. Okay, so we play this. We are not going to see that collision sphere because we are not showing it yet, but you could do that as we did before. Just go here, search for hidden, and check it, and then now when you play, you'll see it as you see it in the editor. Good for debugging purposes. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. 2 ways to use collision primitives. In this case, we use spheres, but you could use boxes as well. We could attach them, create an actor, and make it a child of another actor, or we could make a composite actor that already has everything in a more permanent way, structure as a component, a child of the other one. Okay, thank you.